I'll say this for him, he's consistent.
Well, he's been so consistent all year.
Not the taste, consistency.
Consistently, yes.
Consistency!
Thanks, losers.
Oh, hello everyone. Happy Joy. We are really excited this week because guess what? It's August. We've had our Hall of Fame game. It is preseason football time. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, there are going to be some more games. Probably the real, I guess, quote, the real games. We did have a game last week, Hall of Fame game. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But first off, my buddy, my host here, Ron Rigney. Ron, how's it going?
I'm all right, man. I just feel, started back to this 15th school year today. A little off today. Just kind of getting back.
Starting school August 8th.
Getting back into swing.
Ridiculous.
I know, right? Yeah.
Gosh.
So I'm a little
little
groggy today, but I'm good.
I remember back in the olden days when we didn't even start school until after Labor Day. And now it's August 8th. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, see, I go back a week early. The kids come back next week. But
I
still
get
have
that,
people
but
like
still.
In the Northeast that tell me that they still are out until Labor Day. So
yeah, but they may not get out till mid-June too. So
right, yeah.
It's all a perspective of what warm part. To be honest with you, I'd rather get out a little bit later and then have a little bit more. Because to me, August, September is warmer than May, early June. You know what I mean? At least up here. Down there, I know it's hot all the time, so it doesn't matter to you folks. But but and maybe up there it would be better because it may be cooler in May than it is in August, September for sure. I'll bet. So interesting weekend for those of you who may have not heard in the past. It was Hall of Fame weekend here in Canton, Ohio. That's where I live and lived here all my life. And for the last 29 years, I've had the honor and privilege of being a shiny driver or a driver for the Transportation Committee of the Hall of Fame. So, again, this year I got to drive Brian Westbrook. So, Shane Manila and all you Eagles fans out there, you should be very jealous, and you were, because I sent you pictures and you hated me. For those that really don't have a clue what that all consists of, just imagine that you are basically the one and only chauffeur of the enshrinee and his wife, maybe his kids, even though there is somebody that actually kind of takes care of them separately. Basically, I'm in charge of just Brian. So every year I have an enshrinee from the moment they get off the plane to the moment they get on the plane. I am there to take them everywhere. And I'm, it can be some long days and nights as Friday night turned into Saturday morning at 3 a.m. because that was the night of his party, enshrinement party. And Saturday night went to 3:30 a.m., but sadly that was because his mom was taken to the hospital and with a slight stroke. And I think she's doing better. She's still in the hospital. Brian is actually still in town, as far as I know. And so kind of a damper to the weekend, but it was a great time, as always. It's just an amazing scenario every year just to be standing in the lobby of the hotel and, there goes Tony Dorsett, and there goes LaDainian Tomlinson, and there walks, Jerry Kramer, and, just one after another. And, even after 29 years, I'm still in awe of the scenario. Because I sit here and think that there aren't too many people in this world that get to do this and get this, this privilege of just standing here and taking this all in, and it's a really cool thing. Friday night was his party. He did it before the enshrinement night. It's kind of a thing now. They kind of seem to be getting away from doing it right after the enshrinement, which was the way they always used to do it. Because that way they don't, they're not wore out. They're already wore out emotionally getting on stage, doing that speech, and then at 11 o'clock when it's all over, then they go to the party and party till 4 o'clock, and that's a long day for them and me. So a lot of guys has been changing it to Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, Friday nights. So his was there in Canton. I got some really cool pictures because I met Brian Westbrook, Donovan McNabb, There were some other guys that I recognized by name. Somebody said Jeremiah Trotter was there. Spagnola was there.
Nice.
Because I guess he was their defensive. I don't think he was their defensive coach. I think he might have been a coach of something, like a line or cornerbacks or whatever. I don't remember exactly what Brian said, but Spagnola was there because he's unemployed. Which I kind of forgot about because I'm like, I said to him, I didn't say to Spagnola, I said to Brian, I'm like, oh, that's right, who's he coaching now? Wasn't he with the Giants last year? And he goes, yeah, he's unemployed. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. I guess I won't bring that up then. But he was there and seemed pretty pleasant. Harold Carmichael was there. I would not have recognized him unless somebody pointed him out, other than the fact he was really tall and had really big hands. But it was really a cool event. Pretty small compared to other parties I've been to, but really well done, and still was a lot of fun, a lot of dancing and that, and I just kind of sat back and watched it. So, like I said, it's always amazing. Chris Berman saw me, called me Aqualung. That always makes my weekend.
That's pretty cool.
So that's it. So it was a really fun time, and as soon as the weekend starts winding down, we start looking at next year's group. And next year, the first-year ballot guys that may have a chance to get in are Tony Gonzalez, Ed Reed, and Champ Bailey. I think Gonzalez gets in. I don't know about the other two. Again, I'm not a defensive guy. I feel like Ed Reed was better than Champ Bailey. I feel like Champ Bailey was like Terrell Davis. Like he had like 4 or 5 really good years and then was kind of below average after that. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, see, that to me, that's the problem with guys, that play the shutdown corner role, because you think about how good Champ Bailey was as a cover corner, and I think that I think Ed Reed would get a slight edge just because he was more of a kind of a ball hawk, kind of a turnover creator than Champ Bailey was, because you don't throw at guys like that. That's one of the things that they talk about with a lot of these guys is they have the stats to go in the hall. Well, if you're not getting opportunities to get thrown at, you're not going to have the stats, but that doesn't mean that you're still not great at what you did.
Right.
And I think he gets kind of an unfair shake at that. But yeah, I agree with you. Gonzalez has got to be a slam dunk first ballot guy.
Well, it's interesting because so there's a gentleman named Rick Goslin, and Rick is a writer for Dallas newspaper, and but he's also the guy that heads up the senior committee at this point. I think he's been a voter for the Hall of Fame for 30 plus years. And he's also very good friends of ours. He always seems to go to lunch, dinner, breakfast, or something with us while we're here. And I always love to pick his brain just because, obviously he's very in tune with the stuff. And, his comment to me was there has never been a first-year ballot tight end. So even Keller Winslow, even Ozzie Newsome, they were not first ballots. And I'm like, well, that's interesting because I just assumed they would have been. So he goes, I think Gonzalez will go. He goes, I don't know if he deserves to be first ballot because no one else has. He says, but somebody at some point's got to be, so I guess, why not? But
well, I mean, the other thing about it is, too, because I brought some of his stats up here, and the main things that stick out to me, the guy was a Pro Bowler 14 times.
Right.
He's second all-time in receptions, not just by a tight end.
Right.
Like he's second all-time in catches, period.
Right.
And he's got the record for receiving yards by a tight end. Now, I don't have who's second on there, but it seems like it sticks in my brain that he's pretty far ahead of him, if I remember right.
I think he is.
Yeah,
because all Gates did was break the touchdown record before he retired last year.
So I don't know if there's too many guys that he's great at the position, but I mean when you're only trailing the guy that a lot of people say is the best player ever, definitely the best receiver ever in catches. I think that's pretty impressive resume that I think that he could be the first one. Yeah,
and I don't think anybody would argue. I know that because Rick is, Goslin is kind of old school. He's like, well, he's not a real tight end. He didn't block. He just was a receiver lined up at the line. I'm like, yeah, I get it. He's not Dick Butkus or Mike Ditka, or he's not, John Mackey. I get that, but that's today's game, and so I said I have no problem with Gonzalez going in, but then there's some guys from the past that will be up again, like John Lynch and Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, and I can see some of those guys getting in, that didn't last this past year because of the T.O. and Randy Moss. To be honest with you, T.O.'s name was never brought up in any of the speeches. It was never brought up by the guys. There is a tremendous hatred for him from the past in Chinese, and I think I heard a quote from one of them that said basically, if he comes to town, we will do bodily harm. Okay. I mean, I guess he could have just said kicked his ass, but sure, let's go with that. So anyway, it is what
who was the I don't know how to word this the way I'm thinking it. Who was the, I guess, is there anybody that kind of popped up that was like a surprise guy that you didn't realize it was going to be there? I know you mentioned the Eagles guys, but was there anybody beyond them that kind of popped up that you got to meet that you hadn't met before that was kind of cool this weekend, or was it just kind of those Eagles guys were the most unexpected?
Yeah, the Eagles guys are most unexpected because it's just so busy. Let me change that. I did not meet him personally. I did see him in the car beside me as we were waiting to pull out. But Michael Phelps was in town all weekend for Ray Lewis, which I haven't figured out why there's a connection there.
Okay.
But he was, and one of our drivers drove him around all weekend. So that was interesting. Because I was, the least I would expect of anybody as a friend to hang out with Ray Lewis, Michael Phelps would have probably been dead last on my list.
Right.
But yeah, he was there, and pretty kind of taken back. He's not as outgoing as you'd think. It's kind of pretty reserved. He was very nervous about going anywhere. Ray Lewis had 3 bodyguards around him at all times. He was very nervous about being there. So, that kind of stuff is always intriguing to me because I kind of feel like I'm standing beside you. So, wouldn't I be in the line of fire too? I mean,
maybe I need to not do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, will your boys take a bullet for me? Just want to know. Anyway. But that was, there wasn't too many other big celebrities that I'm aware of. Like you said, again, we don't get to go to all the parties like we used to because they're all spread out. And, so that's kind of tough. So I don't know if anybody else was at, or lockers but everybody seemed to have pretty small parties. It wasn't the big flamboyant, nobody had any big name musical stars like we've had in the past. So, I felt from that standpoint it was actually a pretty laid back, calm kind of group, and I was okay with that.
Yeah,
I didn't know what to
for a good weekend.
Yeah, I mean it's okay if it's a little scaled back because the big parties and lots of people makes it very difficult to make sure all those people get back to the place they need to get back to, and can cause late nights. But even Brian pretty much shut his party down at 2 when it was supposed to end, and people were kind of all standing there dancing, and he's walking up the steps to leave, and I think everybody went, "Oh, guest of honor's leaving. Maybe we should go." So, super super nice guy, super nice family. So, looking forward to him coming back every year, and he actually is moving to Orlando. So, he used to live in Denver, but he's not working for the Eagles anymore. So anyway, so that was my weekend. So it was a lot of fun. But so let's talk fantasy football. I thought first we'd kind of go through basically the team reports that are out there floating around amongst the different teams, and we'll kind of go alphabetical order and just kind of highlight, the ones that stick out. I mean, we know David Johnson's good. We don't need to highlight that. So for the Cardinals, Bradford is obviously going to be the starter. Johnson is good, and Larry Fitzgerald's good. Other than that, there really isn't much else to be concerned about. Ricky Seals-Jones is still the tight end, but Gresham's still there, and Seals-Jones has the issues with off the field. So I think everything at this point is okay Arizona-wise, unless you have some thoughts there.
No, I mean the only thing that I looked at is the battle just for the wide receiver 2 spot, and it's one of those things where you have rookies and you have kind of a a bunch of no names. Bryce Butler's certainly a few flashes here and there in Dallas, but yeah, there's
And
definitely
J.J.
not.
Nelson's been there off and on.
Yeah,
in the past,
that's true.
But
He's a guy that's been in the
he's
system.
always been kind of like a one-hit, one catch wonder per game kind of thing. So
Yeah.
certainly.
I mean, beyond a dynasty, I don't think there's anybody. I mean, Christian Kirk in a dynasty, but other than that, I don't think there's
Right.
another receiver you want there.
So as
no,
we
no.
move to Atlanta, so the quote is Steve Sarkisian says that Ryan is more comfortable with the personnel, knowing what guys to use in certain situations, which is disturbing since nobody has changed from last year. That tells me that he didn't know where guys were using in situations when they're all the same people. Devontae Freeman obviously is looking good. We expect him, to be that. Says Matt Ryan expects Austin Hooper to earn a lot of volume this year, citing improved route running. I'll see that when I believe it. They're talking about Calvin Ridley dropping the ball enough that beat reporters are citing his dropped history. That's interesting. So, I think everything's pretty much in check. I don't expect... there may be a little bit of an improvement in Atlanta, but I wouldn't expect a big improvement. I think the key is Devontae Freeman staying healthy. Last year he wasn't having a bad year, but then he missed 3 or 4 games. I still feel if he stays healthy all year, Coleman will just be not even an RB2, but we'll see, because it appears Sarkisian doesn't believe in Shanahan's past of using them both equally, and it seemed like Freeman got most of the work there, so we'll kind of go forward with that. As we head to Baltimore, there's all kinds of talk about how Flacco is looking great, which is not surprising because he's got Lamar Jackson breathing down his throat. But if you saw Lamar Jackson's debut on Thursday night, he's got a ways to go. Didn't look all that great against the second teams. Talk about Michael Crabtree being the overwhelming favorite. He's certainly been high on my list. I have him ranked 21st, and I think that's way above his ADP at this point, which is sitting at 26. So, about 5 higher. But I just feel like I've been drafting him when I have drafted him as an RB as a wide receiver 3, which I think is a perfect value. Because you're going to get, especially in a PPR, I think he's going to see a lot of targets. They're saying John Brown looks good too, but John Brown is a Ted Ginn. He's a deep threat. That's about it.
He's not going to be a big volume guy, big target guy. He's going to be kind of that Mike Wallace. If he does have a big game, it's going to be like one of those Sammy Watkins big games. It's going to be like two for 75 and a score or something like that. And the other thing, I don't know if you saw much of that. Well, you were there. I don't know if you actually get to watch much.
Yeah, I watched the first couple series when none of the starters came out on the field. I left and went back in to do my job. But I heard
Rashad Perryman was a guy that too. I mean, he had a couple of okay grabs, but he also had one for sure right through his hands on a slant from RG3 there early on. So he looked kind of unimpressive as well. So there's really not a whole lot of competition there for Crabtree anyway. So I think the volume is definitely going to be there for him. So I agree with you there. He's a perfect candidate for wide receiver 3.
Yeah, definitely. Buffalo, with Sean McCoy in the situation he's in, I'm staying way far away from that. I don't care where I could draft him. Just not happening. I just don't feel comfortable about it. The guy I have been interested in drafting is Kelvin Benjamin. Again, Buffalo's team is going to be terrible. They're going to be playing from behind quite a bit. So I can see a lot of garbage targets for Kelvin Benjamin. Even with Corey Coleman there. I mean, Corey Coleman was so bad that the Browns let him go, so he can't be that good. But Kelvin Benjamin should be the guy. And again, kind of like Crabtree, I'd like to get him maybe a spot later, more like a wide receiver 4, because I think he'll be 3 value, a wide receiver 3 value. Right now, I have him ranked. Where do I have him ranked? I can't even find him on my own list. Sad. Kelvin Benjamin.
He is our number 52.
52. So I need to move him up. So I'll move him up to a wide receiver 4. Again, just because I think that's a better value for him. But getting him late will be a good value. So.
Well, and it's kind of the reason I like Dante Moncrief this year too. Not necessarily because I think there's going to be huge value there, but they're just very cheap wide receiver 1s in real life that you're going to get later on too. They may not necessarily be guys that you're going to start every week. But like you said, if you can have them as your 4 or 5, that's not too bad considering when you get down to that spot where they're going as far as their ADPs, what else is out there. It dries up pretty quick. So if you can get a wide receiver 1 that late, that's still pretty good value.
Definitely. As we head to Carolina and we talk about the quarterback from Carolina, says he's great, he's ready to roll, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. You know how this works, folks. Do not draft him. This man is so inconsistent. Offensive coordinator Norv Turner is not going to help this problem. The funniest, probably most intriguing comment of the week, though, had to come from Ron Rivera that says that he hopes to get Christian McCaffrey the ball 25 to 30 times a game. That would put him in like Lev Bell, Todd Gurley range. I just can't see that happening. Do you agree? I mean, are you buying that hype?
Well, let's see here. 25 times 16 is 400. So on the low end of that, he's saying he's going to give him 400 carries, which I don't know.
Not carries. This is
touches.
Gets the ball.
Touches, right?
Because
yes.
obviously there could be a lot of passes too.
Yeah. So I misspoke there, but no, there's no way. I mean, if you've got guys like Gurley and like Lev Bell that I don't think have ever gotten to that point, and you think about how much they get the ball
right,
and how much they want to drive those guys into the ground, that's not going to happen. I mean, you still got Cam Newton back there. He's going to sling it a little bit. He's got a couple of guys to throw to.
Well, they got C.J. Anderson. There's no reason for him to be carrying the ball that much. At least Lev Bell has nothing around him. There's not like you can share carries with James Conner, but why would if you're giving McCaffrey that many touches, that means C.J. Anderson is going to get nothing.
Well, and they talk about how he's bulked up a little bit too. I mean, I don't necessarily call 212 a bulked up guy that I want to get the ball for.
I'm 212. I don't.
Well,
think
yeah,
I'm
but I'm also, I don't know if I'm going to hand you the ball 400 times either, Bob. No offense.
No, I'm not.
But yeah, so I mean, if he was like maybe 230, 235, a bigger back possibly, but that's a crazy number. I don't know where that came from. I don't know why you'd even throw that out there, unless just to generate some conversation. Other than that, I'm really not sure.
Right. The guy at wide receiver, Devin Funches, who I do have 27th overall, so wide receiver 3 spot, is heading into a contract year. So this also gives me a lot of love and warm and fuzzies about him because of the fact that he's playing for the big money. So that's a good thing. It says Newton's favorite target, tight end Greg Olsen, is healthy and having a great camp. That's good. I'm still a little leery about him overall, but I guess that gives me a better feel. I mean, I have him ranked 8th. Usually I'm drafting somebody like Kyle Rudolph or Jimmy Graham. And normally where I used to always be all over Greg Olsen as my number 1 tight end, I think I'm still going to stay away. Maybe I'll see how he looks in some of the games if we watch some game tape, but at this point I think I'm going to probably stay away from that scenario. Chicago Bears, as I mentioned, did not play any starters in the Hall of Fame game. They have said that Trigon has been lining up quite a bit at wide receiver. I really do see them kind of making Tariq Cohen the Duke Johnson here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. So PPR format, I think I'm going to move him up a little bit more than he is. I have him 31st. I may even move him into pretty close to the top 24 because I think that that's somebody that could really benefit from that. Anthony Miller is looking good in camp. I've heard a lot of good things. I know his ADP is moving up quite a bit. In fact, I was going to go check that to see how he's been moving up because he's getting a lot of love from everywhere I've heard so far. But I don't see him. Anyway. There he is. 65. Well, he's not moving up that much. So, could be a good value there. Could be somebody worth picking up. That's about it. Chicago, I mean, obviously, Jordan Howard is still good. Cincinnati Bengals. Says Andy Dalton is one of the many players raving about the new offense designed by Bill Lazor, which is interesting because Bill Lazor was there for 3/4 of the year last year and didn't seem to be doing that great. But that's a good news. Obviously, there's always that kind of talk floating around. They said Joe Mixon is looking good. He's impressing. I kind of like Mixon this year. I mean, again, getting him value-wise, I think I have him as an RB2. I certainly don't have him as a 1. I have him 18th, right after Kenyon Drake, Alex Collins. So I'm okay with that. I mean, again, he didn't look great last year, and I think they've improved. They've definitely improved their offensive line, so kind of happy about that. Might make Joe Mixon a good value as an RB2.
Well, and you gotta like the fact Jeremy Hill left town as well. That to me is a big thing for him. Also, that means that he's going to be kind of that guy that's going to get the between the tackles carry. He's going to get the short yardage, and he doesn't have to worry about somebody breathing down his neck because we know Gio Bernard is not that same style of runner. So
definitely
bodes well for him.
John Ross has been looking good in camp. Tyler Eifert is healthy today, which is good. But they say he's being treated with kid gloves. No kidding. Going to the Cleveland Browns. It's been interesting. As you know, they're on Hard Knocks. I think the first show may have been last night, or at least not too long ago, because my future potential son-in-law was tweeting me asking me if I had HBO so that I could watch it. And I'm like, no, I don't. But anyway, obviously the Josh Gordon thing is an issue. We don't know about that, but they trade away Gordon. And then Antonio Callaway obviously pulled a Josh Gordon and got picked up for marijuana possession, bullets in the car, suspended license. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Stuff we do every day.
Right, yeah. Especially if I have my suspended license, I'm going to go out and drive and throw all that stuff in my car too.
Exactly.
Just to add to the fun.
His excuse was, one, it is his car, but he hasn't drove it in a long time. He loaned it to somebody else, and they're not his marijuana. It's not his bullets, and right, okay. Anyway, this is the same guy that failed a drug test at the combine. So
I was going to say, even if it's not all mine, I'm going to still put myself in that position with the chance I've been given to.
Knowing what kind of scenario you're under. Carlos Hyde, I guess, certainly, that's such a messy backfield. It's too bad because I really like Hyde. And I still may draft him, and I think I've drafted him in some leagues as my running back 3 or 4. And I still think that's a good choice. I mean, I just think that Hyde is going to do better than people think. I think he's going to hold Nick Chubb off. Now, I'm not saying that every once in a while Chubb may come in and let him give him a break, but I think if he runs with passion and kind of like he did late in San Francisco last year and stays healthy, I think he keeps the job, but that's my opinion, not the coaches. But so as we head to Dallas, obviously Zeke's back. The real messiness there is the wide receiver core. Between Allen Hurns, who's already hurt, so that's not helping much. You got rookie Michael Gallup, and you got Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley has always been a favorite of Prescott, so I kind of like him as a potential PPR late kind of pickup. Because he might see a lot of targets. The tight end situation, I asked Rick Goslin, I said, so Blake Jarwin versus Rico Gathers, do I want either one on my fantasy team? And I don't think he could have said, oh, hell no, fast enough. So stay away, folks. But he did say that, it's tough down there. He pretty much reiterated what is being written, which is the team is just inconsistent, especially the passing game. It's a little bit rough. So I would stay away from that. I'm still a little worried about Zeke with a poor passing game because if teams kind of stack the box and there's not a strong enough passing game to keep them honest, I have to believe Zeke could be in a little trouble. I mean, I'm just a little worried.
See, the thing with me though is I get that to a point, but I'd be a little bit more worried if they didn't have as good of an offensive line as they have.
Right. No,
that's one thing that it makes me feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, there's not going to be anything to throw to in that offense. It's going to make any defense worry about them downfield. And I don't care who you have back there throwing
and Zeke's not that bad of a pass catcher, so I can see him get a lot of balls out of the backfield as well.
Right. Yeah, but I don't know who they're going to have there that's going to stretch the field so much.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So. Well, Terrence Williams usually that guy, but I don't know if it's enough. As we move into Denver, Case Keenum has been looking good. I know he's been a favorite of yours and mine. I mean, I feel like this is a great backup to pick at some point, or 2-quarterback league. Definitely get him as your second if you can wait a little bit longer. So I like that. Other than that, really, then it's the battle for who's going to be the best runner. You've got Devontae Booker, who's tried it in the past and has failed miserably, and you've got Royce Freeman, the rookie. I know Colby's all over Royce Freeman. We'll see if that comes true. But at this point, I think that's who you got to go with. It's just a question of when do you take them, and how's that going to work. So we'll see how that all plays out. As we move into Detroit, really, again, the only battle there is going to be at running back. They've said that Kerryon Johnson has looked good. He's looked good in pass protection, but they still feel that this is a committee because of him and Garrett and Amir Abdullah and Theo Riddick. You've just got a lot of people that, so I can see them kind of playing, I'll call it the Patriots game of whoever's the hot, scenario or the hot, running back that week in that situation that they need in that game flow. If they're losing and they need to throw the ball, it's going to be Theo Riddick. If they're winning, then maybe Kerryon Johnson gets a little more carries. If they're at the goal line, you're going to give the ball to Blunt. I mean, I just don't see a lot of opportunity for Kerryon Johnson to fit in there that much at this point. Even though I've heard that he could be the future as a 3-down back. At this point, I don't think they're going to take that kind of chance. So,
especially with all the veterans they got back there,
right,
like you said. But the other thing is too, I think I read somewhere that Amir Abdullah is a guy that they might look to try to transition maybe to more of kind of a special teams kind of role, or he might be even cut before the final cuts come out. So we'll just kind of see how he performs.
Right. Green Bay, no question that Aaron Rodgers is the man. Again, the situation there is the running back situation. Aaron Jones has been suspended, and he's had an early camp hamstring tweak. So I have believed all along that Jamal Williams should be the guy and will be the guy. As I mentioned before in the Fantasy Football Guide, that Williams last year when he was the starter went like 5 for 7 or 5 for 8 in clutch games, and he proved that he was the better player, in my opinion, amongst the three of them. That doesn't mean that's what Mike McCarthy thinks, but I feel like that should be the best bet. I think Jimmy Graham is still a great pick. They said he's already made quite a number of impressive red zone touchdown catches, and that's what he's good at. He's a big, tall, long arm guy, and that's what he did well in Seattle. And I can see him being the Jordy Nelson in the end zone for them this year. And so Graham is definitely one of my favorite picks. So.
Yeah, I think his value is definitely touchdown dependent this year.
It was touchdown dependent last year.
Yeah, I think those days of him being able to catch 8 for 160 yards or whatever are way behind him. But and I guess too, if you get him at a big enough value, if he can put together maybe 5 grabs for 50 yards, 60 yards, and be somewhat consistent, that's okay. But yeah, he's definitely going to be a guy that's his value is definitely going to come in the red zone on touchdowns for sure.
Definitely. So as we head into Houston, Colby's favorite team, everything is falling in line just as we called this. Deshaun Watson's looking great. Deshaun Watson is looking even better when he's hooking up with DeAndre Hopkins. Will Fuller has gained 15, 20 pounds so that he can be in better shape, better weight training. But our boy, Mr. PB&J, is actually starting to look more like PB&J with bananas. Because they said he's dropped 8 pounds. He's much quicker. He's much more explosive, and he is looking great in practice. And the fact that Deonta Foreman still has no return from his ruptured Achilles that he suffered last November, our boy's looking real good as the RB2 we were talking about in the past. So
we might have to start calling him PB Fit. That powdered peanut butter is supposed to be better for you.
Oh, there you go. There we go.
So he might be our PB
PB
Fit guy.
Fit NJ.
There you go.
There you go.
Sir.
PB Fit
yes.
NJ. That's our new name.
I love it.
So that's all going as expected, as we called it. So moving to Indianapolis, Andrew Luck is actually alive and well, throwing the ball. I've seen some more spots on video of the camp and him throwing it with quite a bit of strength and accuracy. So that's a good thing. And of course, he's moving up the charts. But I still think that he's in a spot that if you can draft now and get him before he keeps moving up, because if he gets in some games and starts throwing some lasers at T.Y. Hilton for touchdowns, he's going to move top 5 real quick. So definitely keep an eye on that. It says Ryan Grant's got the early lead for wide receiver 2, but I'm still not sold on that. I'm okay with T.Y. Hilton, but I'm not sure I'm going to sit there and try to grab Ryan Grant or Chester Rogers. And then, of course, your boy, Jack Doyle, has been looking great. They're still talking about producing 2 fantasy viable tight ends with Eric Ebron. I just can't see it. I think Doyle.
I'm the same as you. I mean, like you said too. If you're going after Luck, you better go get him now, because if he can keep doing what he's doing. I know tomorrow night they play the first preseason game against Seattle, and I read where Luck is supposed to play the entire first quarter, so should be a nice look at him. And hopefully they'll play some of the other ones. I don't know how that's going to shake up. I haven't seen if Hilton and those guys are going to play, but I would like to see the kind of the rapport that maybe he has with guys like Ryan Grant and like Chester Rogers and some of the rookies that they have as well. It'll also be interesting to see I want to see the 2 rookie running backs as well, Wilkins and Hines, because I read it the other day where it looks like Wilkins is kind of the more impressive guy with the pads on, which his game kind of lends itself to that. I think he's going to be kind of the more short yardage goal line kind of guy, and then Mack and Hines are pretty similar. But yeah, as far as the Eric Ebron thing, as a Colts fan, I would love to see him develop into some sort of weapon, but it's something that when you said that, I laughed out loud on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, remains to be seen.
Well, and again, I think this the notes here also, as you just mentioned, Marlon Mack needs to be taken out of he's going to be the starter in Indianapolis. I mean, he is not. I think I have him as a running back 4. There's no way. I mean, and I've seen people still taking him, kind of high up there. I hope that, there's people listening to us will be smarter than that. But let's move into Jacksonville. We know they have the best defense, so when you're drafting your defense, certainly grab Jacksonville. But offensively, Blake Bortles got his wrist surgically worked on in January, and they say that he's having a really good offseason. That's good. Fournette is Fournette, and he's certainly getting drafted high, which I didn't know is he's lost 15 pounds, and he too is looking much quicker and leaner. That's scary for most teams out there because he ran pretty well last year, and had a few injuries in that. So the fact that he's a little lighter, might a little less wear and tear on the knees, that's certainly a good thing for him. Right now, I think if anything's messy there, it's got to be the wide receiver corps because they have so many between Dede Westbrook and Keelan Cole and Dante Moncrief and Marquise Lee. It's just crazy how much different choices they have, and none of them really stand out as they're going to be the number one. They'll get the most targets. So I think at one point I have 4 or 5 Jacksonville wide receivers in my top 75 because they all have some potential and have looked good in the times when they were playing when the other guys were hurt. I just don't know who's going to be the guy at this point. I mean, right?
And it makes them all kind of mesh together to make for a solid wide receiver core. But I think the guy that benefits the most is obviously Blake Bortles because he may not have that set one, and for us in fantasy, that kind of sucks at wide receiver. But if you're taking him maybe as your quarterback 2 or your backup or maybe your bye week guy, that definitely bodes well for him for having more solid guys that he can get the ball out to.
Right. I mean, right now they have it in order: Lee, Cole, Westbrook. Moncrief's actually 5th, which is really surprising. But we'll just have to see how that plays out and keep an eye on that as we go through camp. Kansas City, I mean, we know what we have there. We have a new, quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be interesting. I think if they're smart, they use Kareem Hunt a little more than they did last year to kind of keep things in check. Obviously he's been throwing to Kelsey the most, especially in crucial situations during scrimmages. But that's what you expect. I mean, Tyreek Hill, I can see him using a lot on quick slants, and bust off a 70-yard touchdown pass. And I know he's got a big arm, but until that gets all kind of synced up with the receivers, I think you'll see him kind of hold back a little bit, as they should with him. So, Chargers, everything's the biggest news there right now is wide receiver Mike Williams is really looking strong in camp. I was on last night with my boy Adam Ronis, and they put together I forget they call it the World Championships of football. He said the ADP for Mike Williams was 75 in that. He said, for some reason, he goes, and that's the only place I've seen him be that high. He said, but everybody has drafted Mike Williams. He goes, I don't understand why, but they are. And I said, well, he's had a strong camp. I've seen a lot of videos of him, making some good catches, and, so it is. We'll just kind of see how that plays out.
I mean, the only thing I could figure is maybe because they haven't signed Gates to replace Hunter Henry, and so they don't have that tight end threat there. I know Virgil Green is the guy, but I don't really call him a threat on the level of Gates and Henry. So maybe they're thinking that those targets have to go to maybe Mike Williams or Tyrell Williams too. So I don't know. That could be it.
So Rams are next, and they said that Goff is developing a nice rapport with Brandon Cooks, while the Rams, even though the Rams struggled to integrate Watkins in it, Cooks has been doing pretty good. Everything's as is. Todd Gurley is Todd Gurley. He's awesome. We move on to Miami. Tannehill's doing good. The interesting thing, I guess, this week was the first release of the initial depth chart had Frank Gore listed as a co-starter alongside Gase. And Adam Gase says that Frank Gore doesn't look any different than he did 10 years ago. First off, I think Adam Gase is having some kind of sexual relationships with Frank Gore or something, because he certainly is a lot slower than he was 10 years ago. Yes, Frank Gore is a beast, and he does work out, and he's certainly always in shape. But there's just no way that Gase can be that stupid to, share 50-50 carries with Gore and Drake. They're two different runners. Gore's more of a north-south, and Drake's got more speed, more breakout speed. I just don't understand that at all. So we'll just have to wait and see in the games how that.
I read somewhere where he was being interviewed about, and he was asked specifically that. They asked why he listed Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake as co-starters, and he was quoted as saying just to be an a-hole. So,
all right, that's a better answer. I like that answer better than he doesn't look any different than he did 10 years ago. That's a lie. Being an a-hole, that's fine. I love it. If that's what he's doing, good for him. Then and I said, and I hope everybody in all my leagues read that and go, oh, I'm not gonna draft Kenyon Drake because Frank Gore's going to steal. No, good. Believe that, because I'm going to take Kenyon Drake every day as my RB2 if he's sitting there. So the only other interesting thing is the fact that Danny Amendola has been kind of Ryan Tannehill's favorite target. But on the other hand, it doesn't surprise me, because Amendola plays the slot, Jarvis Landry played the slot, and who was Tannehill's favorite target? There we go. So I think I'm going to be moving Amendola up a little bit in my charts in PPR, because I think that could be a thing. I could see. Now, the problem with Amendola is the boy can never stay healthy. So that's the key. But if he can stay healthy,
definitely like him.
I think he could be a great wide receiver, 6'7". If you have a pretty deep league or a best ball, I think that wouldn't be a bad scenario. So
he's in a wide receiver 65 right now, and he makes for a really cheap PPR option for sure.
Right, definitely. Minnesota, everything seems to be good. I know Dalvin Cook has looked good in preseason. There isn't really much there. It's really just Kirk Cousins and everybody kind of getting on the same page. What you read here is kind of that they're struggling a little bit to move the ball against the Vikings defensive unit. But let's be honest, the Vikings have probably the second best defensive unit in the country, in the NFL, outside of the Jaguars. So, guess what, Kurt? It's a good thing they don't have to play against them. But that's been going on there. New England, this past week, Sony Michel had a knee injury, which they say is not as serious as initially feared. But that's a hot mess there. I mean, that's exactly what we see every year from the New England Patriots backfield. Really, in my mind, it's Rex Burkhead and James White, and then everybody else. If Sony Michel can get some time in there, that's fine. But they signed Rex Burkhead to a 3-year deal. They wanted to keep him. They wanted to make sure he was there. So I don't see why they're going to force him in. He may take James White's role maybe at some point, but I don't know. James White still looked pretty good last year in the playoffs. They did sign Eric Decker to help out with the offense because they waived Malcolm Mitchell. So that he'll be there probably at least half the year, I would assume. And Gronk is still Gronk, and he's awesome. So New Orleans Saints. we'll just go quickly. Again, everything kind of as we expected. Cameron Meredith is putting in some side work with Breeze. That's a good thing. I still don't really have a lot of love for him. I still think it's going to be Thomas, and Kamara pretty much running the offense. We'll see from there. New York Giants, everybody's healthy there. Everybody's doing pretty good. Beckham's trying to get paid, so we'll see how long that takes for that to happen. Evan Ingram's still looking good. Still, I think, he'll still be, a top 10 tight end. The New York Jets pretty much stink, even though they say Crowell has been looking impressive. He might be a good late round pick as well. I mean, he's really all they got. Powell has been quiet. Elijah McGuire got hurt or suspended. I think he got hurt. I think
that's right, yeah.
Because I think he's out for the year. I think he tore something or broke something. So he's out for the year. So, Crowell may be decent. The only problem is, so Adam brought this up last night on his show, and I said the only problem is that, Crowell had the potential to be good in Cleveland, and he couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So I just don't see how he's going to go there and all of a sudden just, turn it on again.
Well, and the thing, too, that I was going to say about him is I like that maybe he would be like their short yardage, goal line guy, but they have to actually get in the red zone and get to the goal line, which could be a problem.
Yeah,
so.
there's always that.
Yeah.
So as much as we hate Oakland, as at least a fantasy team, I hate to say this, but I'm starting to show a little love for Marshawn Lynch in standard leagues, and this was one of the reasons they say he's also slimmed down to 232. Lynch loves him, or not Lynch. I'm sorry, Gruden loves him, and so I can see him using Lynch quite a bit. And if you remember, Marshawn Lynch put up 6 straight clutch games at the end of last year. So I think the team realized, you know what, maybe he is still pretty good. So I can see them using him a little bit more. Like I said, in a standard league, I think he's a really good RB2 because he'll be the one getting the touchdowns and getting the majority of the yards. So I have a little bit of love for him. They say that Jordy's looking good, so I've moved him into the wide receiver 3 range. I always did kind of believe in him. I just didn't know how he looked, so we'll see how he looks in games. Philadelphia, Wentz is not on the PUP list, but he's also being very limited in practice, which makes sense. There's no reason to put him out there. We know what he can do. There's no reason to risk any more injury. He's fine. I laugh when I see that running back Jay Ajayi is putting some distance between him and the rest of the Eagle running backs. I'm sorry, what are the rest of the Eagle running backs? Corey Clement is a Darren Sproles, and that's all there is. There is nobody else to put distance between. Of course he's going to get the carries, but as we saw last year in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, they used Corey Clement just as much as, the Saints used Alvin Kamara or, Darren Sproles back in the day. So I still see this being more of a passing team, and Clement being on the field, getting as many targets or touches as Ajayi. Any disagreement?
No, not at all. I don't really see anything that's going to... I'll put it this way. I don't see anything... We've talked about our unconditional love for Jay Ajayi many times here on the show, and I don't necessarily see anything that puts him that far ahead of Corey Clement for me. And I know that you've done this in a lot of drafts too. Later on, you've taken a flyer on Corey Clement, and I'd rather pay the price way later and take his potential at stealing some of these carries from Ajayi. You're paying nothing for him, but no, there's no scenario where I'm taking Jay Ajayi, trading for him. Not at all. The only thing I think I've ever used Jay Ajayi for is maybe once or twice in DFS, and that's about it.
Right. They do say that Mike Wallace has kind of taken the role and is way ahead of Torrey Smith in the offense. That doesn't surprise me because Torrey Smith's never been really much of a deep threat anyway. Wallace has been a solid veteran for years. Could be a nice late round flyer. I think I have him ranked somewhere in the 60s.
And I've read that he looks as fast as he's ever looked too. So
right,
that's one.
Right.
He's always got that speed going for him.
I have him actually 72, so I'll move him up some. So yeah, I just feel like that's a guy. Again, one of the things we talk about is consistency, but usually the consistency comes from these veteran players who may switch teams. And, they don't have to, while they are relearning a new offense, they've also been playing for years, so this is not as, big of a change for them, and they can walk right in and make an impact. And I could see him, again, he's going to be on the other side of Alshon Jeffries, but let's also remember that Alshon Jeffries is on the PUP list. And so Wallace could end up being, the number one receiver in Philly if Jeffries go down because, like you said, other than Torrey Smith, there really isn't anything else there, to go along with him, other than Nelson Aguilar. So, it may not be number one. Maybe it'll be 1A and 1B, but I think they'll be using his veteran presence quite a bit. So, definitely keep an eye on that. Pittsburgh, guess what? Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown are still really good. There's really not much else beyond that. Ben's in the best shape of his life. That's judgmental. He claimed he's in the best shape of his life, but everybody does this time of year. San Francisco, Jimmy Garoppolo still has really good hair, as mentioned quite a bit today on John Hanson's show. Did you hear that today, the draft?
I heard they were doing that, and then I
turned it off so fast.
Well, I was going to say, actually, I take that back. Yeah, I did turn it before they did that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was obnoxious. And they did like a full draft. Like it was only 4 of them, but they did like a quarterback. I thought they'd do like 4 people each total. They did like 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a flex, a kicker. I'm like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I turned it off after a while. I can't believe they were wasting an hour plus on that. So San Francisco, Jerick McKinnon, again, I just picked him in a league that was heavy on points with targets and points per reception and that. But, as they said, Matt Breida's also looked good. And I still think Matt Breida is a good pick late. I still feel like, and you remember we talked about this early in the summer when Kyle Shanahan said that, McKinnon was going to be his Devontae Freeman and Matt Breida was going to be his Tevin Coleman. So I think there's certainly some value in Breida as a late round pick, So I still have a lot of love for him, with that's for sure.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys too later on. That's one of those PPR flex type backs that I think that you can get for really cheap. That could end up being a really nice value. Especially too, we talked about we don't really know about the durability with Jerick McKinnon just yet. We know he's going to get the ball a ton because they paid him that way. But Matt Breida could end up being one of those guys that could win you some leagues.
Oh, definitely. All right, so we move on to the train wreck called the Seattle Seahawks. We are back now to Chris Carson being the most impressive Seattle running back, just as he was, week 14 last year, week 4, week, and then he wasn't, then he sucked, and then he got hurt. And folks, and again, Adam asked me this question last night, what I thought about the running back situation in Seattle. And I said, I'll tell you what I think about the entire situation in Seattle. I'm not drafting any of them. He goes, not even Doug Baldwin? I go, no, he has a knee issue. I go, he's the only wide receiver they have. They don't have Jimmy Graham, so they have no tight end. They have running backs that they're not even sure who should be the best one between a rookie and Chris Carson, who, got replaced by, McKissick at one point, and I don't remember all the names of the guys that floated through there. I want nothing to do with the Seattle team. Their defense is not as good anymore. If anything, maybe a Tyler Lockett or a Baldwin might be a good, like Lockett might be a good late round pick because one, he'll be returning a lot of punts, or returning a lot of kickoffs because the teams will be scoring so much against them. They'll be throwing the ball a lot deep. I just think it's a hot mess.
Well, I mean, the only guy I might look at would be Russell Wilson. I think I have him in one of my 2 QB leagues for that reason there that you said. I mean, there's not one guy that, skill-wise is going to stand out and be a guy that excels for me, but it could give Russell Wilson some value just because I think they are going to be playing catch-up most of the year, especially if they trade Earl Thomas, which we talked about doing, is sending him out of town.
Well, but the key is can he stay healthy for 16 games? I mean, He does escape a lot of hits, so he certainly, if anybody can survive that, it'll be him. And certainly Wilson isn't a bad pick. because, like you said, he's going to be running for his life, throwing for his life all the time. So I guess there is some value there, but wide receiver wise, quarterback or running back and tight end don't want anything to do with it. So, all right. So last three, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hey, guess what? Peyton Barber looks lighter and quicker. Then what? Since when was Peyton Barber anything anybody worried about anyway? But anyway, so Ronald Jones II is there. We all know he's pretty much the heir apparent. And they'll work them all in through preseason. They said Chris Godwin is now pretty much been put as the number 2 receiver on the depth chart, putting Deshaun Jackson third. This kid had a really nice end of year last year. He went 3 for 4 in clutch games at the end of the year for Tampa. So I think they're giving him a chance because of what he did show then. So I kind of like him. I'm going to move him up, a little bit as well in the tier draft list and get him into a respectable maybe wide receiver 4 spot to draft. Obviously the tight end situation is messy because there's 2 really good ones there. If Cameron Brate or O.J. Howard weren't playing on the same team, they probably could be drafted as starters for your fantasy teams. Problem is they don't. Is there one of them that you think maybe might really stick out than the other? I just don't feel like at this point that's going to happen.
I mean, if I had to pick one, I probably would go. I don't know, because I like O.J. Howard, the fact that he's an athlete, and I think that he's going to be the guy that might get looked at a little bit more around the red zone and might be able to pull off some of those big plays. But Cameron Brate also, I think, has more of Winston's trust because they have more of a rapport. So, I think there's a good and bad with both. But I don't know. If I had to pick one, I think I'd just give a slight edge to Howard just because he is a little bit better of an athlete.
Right.
But it's not much of an edge. Either way, I think they're pretty equal. But if an injury happens to one or the other, you better run to the waiver wire and grab whoever's there, because it's going to make for a pretty solid ad in season if that happens.
Right. In Tennessee, we have now the kind of the typical backfield of kind of like a New England backfield with Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis. Lewis, of course, playing the third down back, and Henry playing the main bell cow type back. But I think they're going to kind of hurt each other. But on the other hand, the Kamara Ingram thing worked out, and that's kind of what these two guys are. So I feel like they both have some value. Again, probably in a standard league, Derrick Henry is going to be worth a little bit more. In a PPR, Deion Lewis is going to be worth a little bit more. But I think they're both going to have a solid year. They got new coaching. That offense last year was just kind of just boring, and it just didn't really do much and never really worked well for the team. Now they've got some new coaches in there. I think these two guys can really be valuable. Corey Davis has looked good, which is great because Rashard Matthews, who's usually been kind of a favorite of Mariota's, is on the PUP list related to his hamstring that bothered him all last year. So that's pretty much Tennessee. Any thoughts on Tennessee? What do you think about the Lewis Henry backfield?
I want to just kind of see how it shakes out, and it's something that we may not see how it shakes out until the season actually starts. But I don't think – I know Lewis is going to get some carries, and I know they signed him to catch some passes and get some touches and be a factor. But I don't know if it's going to affect Derrick Henry as much as we all think. I think it might bump him down a little bit, but he's still a guy that I'm not afraid to take in drafts because I think he might be more of the getting the carries, touchdown focused kind of guy. Corey Davis is one of my favorite guys this year. I liked him at the end of last year. I liked some of the things I saw from him when I did get to see him play, and he's a guy that I think can take that step up. And they had better hope he can, because if Rashard Matthews is not there, there's not a heck of a lot behind him at wide receiver to throw to.
Right. So last one, Washington Redskins. Alex Smith is there. Alex, you know what you get with Alex. He's kind of like the PB&J for quarterbacks. we'll give him that title since we've given Lamar Miller the PB Fit and J now at running back. But Alex Smith is what Alex Smith is. He's a good game manager. He has a good arm. He has good head about him. I think this team will be okay with him. So the Crowder and Paul Richardson, I think, are the two guys that are probably going to benefit the most, and it will probably be the two top receivers for Smith. Jordan Reed is healthy for now. and certainly will probably look good coming out. But we'll just have to see. Chris Thompson is practicing, but his own admission said he wasn't 100%. That scares me a little bit because usually every person says, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm great. I can't wait to get on the field. He said, you know what? I'm not 100% yet. So I don't know. I don't know if that's somebody being humble and trying not to, I don't know. Weird because you don't usually hear guys say that regardless of how hurt they are. And you'll see guys in a walking boot go, I'll be ready for next week. So interesting how that all plays out. So the Redskins, Darius Geis is the guy that everybody seems to be raving about. This says he's as good as advertised. He should be the starting back. I guess there's no reason to believe he shouldn't be. So I'm going to move him up and move Rashad Penny down. And put Geis probably as the top rookie running back after our boy Saquon. So that's all the team. Thanks to everybody for listening. Ron, thank you for being a part of this, even though I think I talked a little bit more than I usually do.
You're the star. You're the star of the show, man. So that's all right.
That's questionable. But, so as we head this week, I'm heading out to New York City this weekend for my Fantasy League of Expert draft with Jake Seeley, Adam Ronis, trying to think of all the guys. Oh, did I tell you who's in my league? The wrestling guy. Eric Young? Does that sound right?
I'm trying to think.
I think that's what his name is. Yeah, Eric Young.
Okay.
So he's drafting in this league this year. Okay. So who else? Frank Stample, who won it last year. Ronis is actually not in my league. There's actually two leagues.
Okay.
One is a Superflex league and one is a standard league. Standard league, and that's the one I'm in. But I was really shocked when I saw that this Eric Young, because I know he's good friends with all the guys at Roto Experts. Eric Young, and if you look him up online, you'll see pictures of him. So he's a I think he's still I don't know if he's still a WWE. He may be retired. But Jim McCormick, ESPN, Seeley, Tim Heaney from RotoWire, Pat Thorman. We have three guys from Football Focus: Scott Barrett, Pat Thorman, and Jeff Radcliffe. That seems unfair, doesn't it?
They definitely stacked the lineup.
And then Mike Florio from NFL.com. So it looks like they may have rearranged some things because Michael Florio was not supposed to be in here before. So it looks like maybe some people backed out or switched when they were drafting. Because a couple of these guys I did not see in here before. Because we did have David Esser, and David's not there, and Michael Florio is filling in. So that's kind of a big deal. And Radcliffe, of course, probably the biggest name. Seeley, these guys are all big shots. So it's interesting. It'll be fun time as always, and I'll be there at Sirius Radio. So if you have Sirius Radio out there, don't forget to listen. I think our drafts are from noon to 5. Mine's from noon to 2, and then I think they're doing a 3 to 5. So make sure you guys listen in on that and tell me how I did in my standard league. And I think I have pick number 10, if I'm not mistaken. I always get screwed in this draft with either a middle or late round. So I have... Oh, I'm sorry. I have number 11 now. See, I think they rearranged this because Tim was number 1 before. Okay, well, we'll see. At this point, I'm now 11th. I was drafting 10th. I got moved down. So I have a feeling I'll be probably going running back. I'll get my Hunt and Cook combination. So
solid start. I like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Ron, for being a part of this, and we will talk to you next week. Tell everybody where they can find you as always.
Catch me on Twitter at TheRealMade. We're still doing some baseball stuff at Fantistics as the season is starting to wind down a little bit, and you can always catch me on the Nasty Cast baseball podcast at Fantrax and Fantrax Dynasty Baseball podcast with more of a minor league dynasty focus that we do all year round. You can catch me with Nate Dockin and Van Lee over there. I want to throw a quick plug out to my boy Van Lee as well. If you're a baseball person and you need that quick recap every morning, if you go to Fantrax, Van Lee has got a new show called Quick Pitches where he recaps what happened the night before in Major League Baseball. That way you can kind of set your lineups accordingly. You know what's going on. He'll go over any injuries, big performances, any pitchers that got shelled. Does it all in about 20, 25 minutes. Really good stuff from my guy Van Lee over there. And then, of course, I had a few technical difficulties today with a couple articles that's going to be going up on BigGuyFantasySports.com. We're going to sort that out tomorrow. I'm going to get the rest of the quarterbacks for your bye weeks done. I'm going to get your bye weeks cranked out here at the other positions as well, receiver, running back, and tight end. Hook you up with those. And then counting down the minutes to the Kings X draft that we got coming up, your neck of the woods that I'm looking at very much forward to being a part of.
Yes, and we will definitely talk more about that in our podcast probably early next week. Big deal. This will be the ultimate fantasy expert draft, and we'll give you all of the details next week on the Fantasy Football Consistency Show. Everybody have a great week. Take care. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.